Perfect.
Okay.
So I just started the recording, so we have this. And hopefully, Neha, were you able to get in touch with Helen?
Who me?
I reached out.
Oh, sorry.
I reached out, but I was not able to get a hold of her.
Okay, got it. Got it. Hopefully, be joined by a few other folks.
Okay.
We've got, yeah, just it's just a 2 more minutes, and then we can go ahead and get started. Hello, hello. We have a phone number 202, ends with 48. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Hello, this is Susie McFadden Rutherford from the DC Office of Disability Rights. How's everyone today?
Not too bad. So,
Great.
hoping that Kelly be able to join. She's the usual. Let me just check in with her. Hello, Kevin, can you hear us? There we go. Kevin, hello. How's it going? Yes, so I think we can go ahead and begin. Maybe to give folks, yeah, actually, we should probably go ahead and begin. So I will call the meeting to order. Let me first start off by saying we've got. I talked to MODA's deputy, and they said that they would fast track our people who have applied. So Kelly has applied, and I know there are a couple other folks that have applied. So hopefully we can actually get to a point. So Kevin, I'm actually giving you this background so that you have some awareness too. This has been a kind of a ongoing struggle. We've got 3 vacancies out of a six community member forum. So we'd really like to get some filled so we can start to have quorum. We have folks that have folks that have applied, which is great. Now we just need to get them through the MODA process. So why don't we go ahead and just start off. Welcome to the October meeting of the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council. Let's kick off maybe with just some introductions. I'm Karthik Balasubramanian. I'm the chair of the MAAC, and then also a professor at Howard University. And then I'll pass it over to Buddy for an intro.
Yes, a member of the MAAC, also the outreach coordinator for the Ward 1 Senior Wellness Center. And I'll toss it over to Ashton.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much. So my name is Ashton Romer. I am an advisory neighborhood commissioner for 6D05, which is in the Southwest waterfront area. I am excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to participate as a member of the public. We'll pass it to Kevin.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin Whitfield. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for the DC Council's Committee on Transportation and the Environment. The main agency in my portfolio is DDOT, so by virtue of that, I sort of sit on these meetings just to sort of get situational awareness of issues affecting residents with disabilities and other mobility challenges.
Yeah.
I will pass it to Zachary.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Zach Smith. I am with the District Department of Transportation, also the liaison to the MAAC, and I will pass it to Neha.
Hello, I'm Neha. I work with Karthik and I'm also a program assistant for MAACDC. Yeah, excited to be here.
And Susie?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Susie McFadden Westbrook from the DC Office of Disability Rights, and I guess liaison. I'm from that office on the MAAC. Welcome.
Great. Well, so this meeting we were hoping to get some representatives from DDOT's various agencies that or various departments, but we weren't able to confirm anyone. But we have had folks confirm for the November meeting. I thought what we would focus on for this meeting was this final that we've talked about. We've kind of worked on the accessibility and equity scorecard. We thought that we could just kind of review that, and we're getting close to final on that. So actually, if we can kind of walk through that together. Hello, Christine. Hey, Christine, can you hear us? Hi, Christine, can you hear us?
Yep, I can.
Perfect. Yeah, we just did intros. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Let me see if I can get my camera to work. Okay. Hi, everyone. Christine Mayer with the Traffic Engineering and Safety Division. I'm with the Traffic Safety Branch, working on corridor safety projects. And I've been helping Zach sort of navigate all the questions that you all have.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. So we're just about to shift into discussing our equity. Oh, we've got someone else as well. Ending in 03. Ending in 03, if you can hear us, if you can just say hello and introduce yourself.
This is not available from DDOT. I had to call in. Google Meet wouldn't let me join this.
Sorry, could you say it one more time?
Non-available comment.
Oh, hello. Yes, Nana. Hello. Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sorry,
Welcome.
I had to call in. Google Meet wouldn't let me join with my phone, and I'm on the train.
Cool. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and we can go into here. Yes. Can folks see my screen?
I see the screen. I don't see the words that well. That's a little better.
Yeah. I'll walk.
Okay.
I'll walk folks through this. So I'll start off by putting this in the chat. So you can follow along, follow the document along.
Okay.
Move over to yes, here we go. So it is maacdc.link/report_card_data. And that is the current draft. If you've got comments afterwards, shoot them over to me. But this is kind of the current draft. But basically, start off with an intro, and then 5. So here are the current 5 metrics that we've got. And kind of would love discussion, and we're getting close to finalization, so it would be great to have discussion as kind of folks that if you think we should add stuff, remove stuff, tweak stuff, would love that conversation. So the first metric is percentage of intersections, and I'll we'll go through these in turn, but the first metric is percentage of intersections with accessible pedestrian signals. Then the next metric, percentage of intersections that comply with DC safety laws regulating sight lines. The third metric is percent of centerline miles, and we'll define what a centerline mile is.
Yeah.
Of DC's high entry network with a design speed of less than or equal to 20 miles an hour. The fourth metric is the percent of intersections that do not permit vehicle left turns or vehicle left turn conflicts with pedestrians. And then the last metric is the percentage of emergency evacuation route centerline miles with a 24/7 bus lane. So I'll kind of walk through each one of these in turn. And then, would love discussion and comments, etc. So Buddy, would you mind kind of explaining what an accessible pedestrian signal is?
Okay. Is that the one with the left turn?
So this is the audible walk signal.
Yeah. Well, okay. Is that the? Okay. Let me back up a little bit here. You mean the signal where
that'll speak to you with the auditory cues?
Yeah. What do you want to know here? I'm not sure.
Just for folks, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, if you can just tell about what it is and why it's important.
Yes, okay. It's an audible signal where it will tell the pedestrians when it's their turn to walk. And one of our former members and I had DDOT install that type of signal at the intersection of Albemarle and Wisconsin, which is a very busy intersection. And what I'm finding is, and I followed up on that, I'm finding that pedestrians now are actually waiting rather than jaywalking. They're waiting for that signal to actually tell them when it is their turn to walk. So I think that particular signal has a double sort of advantage here. Number one, it prevents people from jaywalking because now they know that the signal is timed in such a way that they're able to get across the street safely and in a timely manner. So I think that any intersection where you have a lot of busyness, not only traffic, but pedestrians also, I think they're prime target for one of those signals because, again, it allows the pedestrian, it gives them assurance that they will have their turn crossing the street. The other thing that I think this will assist in, those drivers who are being distracted by doing whatever drivers do, and I don't drive anymore, so I don't know what drivers do now, but persons who are combing their hair, persons who are drinking, a drink, persons who are eating, and that signal says it is time to walk, it may alert someone who is distracted in the automobile. They will hear that signal and it'll give them an opportunity to stop rather than maybe going through a red light. So again, I think that maybe DDOT can look at some of these intersections where you have busy pedestrians moving about and you have a multitude of automobiles, not only personal automobiles, but you have deliveries being made in that area because you have a number of businesses there. So I think those audible signals are just fantastic, and I just urge DDOT to look at other intersections and see if they can install those signals in various locations throughout the city.
Yeah, and specifically, they're particularly helpful for people with visual impairments because it provides an audible signal to say, yes, it is now safe to cross Pennsylvania Avenue, for example, or Wisconsin. So what we've done is we had a kind of robust discussion about how we should split these and kind of tier these. But basically, it's most important. These are most important at very busy streets, and DDOT has a word for that. It's called a principal arterial, kind of the busiest streets. So we've kind of split this off into 3 buckets. One are the busiest streets, or busiest intersections. So basically, any intersection where at least one of the streets is a principal arterial. Then list B, which is, so we'll call that list A, is any intersection that has at least one principal arterial, where one of the roads is a principal arterial. List B is any street that's not already in list A, that is that has one minor arterial road, and that is still a busy road, but it's smaller. And then list C is any street that's not in list, or any intersection that's not in list A or list B, that is non-arterial. So basically, it's not a busy street. So basically, what we're hoping to measure is, okay, list A is the most important. So we'll have, if we've got 2 measurements, so one, the number of intersections in list A that have accessible pedestrian signals. That way, that's our first target is we want this number to be close. We want this number to be 100%. It's the most important one to get to 100%. List B is the next target of okay, we want, after all of the biggest intersections have APS or audible walk signals, then we want the smaller intersections to have audible walk signals. And then list C is all of the non-arterial intersections with I probably should specify here, with traffic signals, that all of the non-arterial traffic signalized intersections, we'd want those to have APS as well, but that is kind of important, but not as important as getting list A and list B. So that's what we had come up with last time. I think, so maybe we can just kind of stop and pause here. Any thoughts, comments about this?
I received an email from someone in Virginia, and I'm not sure whether it was Fairfax or Arlington, and I'm sure. He stated that that part of Virginia is in the process of evaluating and installing those audible signals, and he wanted people to call in and let them know which intersections should have those signals.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, the U.S. Access Board, it's a government or a semi-governmental agency, just came out with some new guidance. Basically, I think requesting that all new pedestrian or any time a signal is being worked on, or any kind of capital project, would have a APS signal installed. So I think we'll start to see this kind of much more widespread, not just in DC, but elsewhere.
And Patrick, I guess the question is, and this may be a question for Zach or someone else, how difficult and expensive is it to install one of those signals at an intersection that would require, I guess, some maintenance in order to install one?
It's a good question. Zach, do you know?
I'm not sure if Christine would know the answer to this one. I will say it's usually we install either APS devices or leading pedestrian intervals when we're doing traffic signal maintenance. I think that's when we sort of like look into making those installations. Christine, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, generally as a best practice, when we are putting in new signals, we are including APS in all of our new signals. It is more expensive to retrofit, but since when they're constructed, we can just sort of include that in the in all of the infrastructure that's, you know, ordered and everything and installed all at once. But it's not expensive, and we are rolling that out as we are able to for the existing signals that do not have it.
Okay.
Cool. Ashton, it looks like you've got a question.
I do. Thank you. I have two questions, actually. One that I had before Christine just gave that information, and one after. So I guess one is the general policy then that these audible signals would be activated by by a button, or would they be automatic? Because I think I heard that DDOT was generally trying to get away from the big buttons, and that pedestrian signal timing was automated, and so a lot of times when you press a button, it actually doesn't do anything anymore. And so is the intent then that the audible walk signals, and you might have said this and maybe I missed it, would be automatic, or would you have to kind of beg for the audible walk signal? And the second question has to do with funding, and wondering, like, when either developers are doing work or other agencies are doing work, how we can, as a, I don't know, Christine, if you or I want to introduce myself, but I'm a commissioner in 6005, which is in Southwest. And we have, a bunch of developments that are probably going to, mess up some streets while they're being done. Is there any way to kind of, is there any avenue for commissioners to request or somehow work with developers to help pay for some of these upgrades if they're anywhere close to any of the infrastructure related to these signals?
So to your first question, so there's a difference between the pedestrian activated walk signal and the APS. So so pedestrian walk signals are on recall, which means they automatically come up for the majority of our intersections in DC. So we are, yes, getting away from where you have to push the button to get a walk signal so that you can cross. And I think we're somewhere in the high 80% of that. I have to confirm that number, and switching over more as we do signal optimization and corridor projects and things like that. Now the APS, there are locations where if it's you do have to, the button is there to get the audible signal. So in areas like residential or places where there are common noise complaints, if it doesn't need to be activated all the time, then general best practice is to have it not be activated. So in that case, it is better for someone with a vision impairment to go and push the button so that they know when the signal is active. So it sort of varies in the context of the city.
So the noise of the signals is more problematic than the noise of the cars in that case, or like residents can be against the audible walk signal for that reason? It's not
that they're against, it's that, like, if we have it's a highly residential area and we have those audible either the words or like the chirping or whatever that you hear, residents that live close to or in buildings near some of those, if it's active all of the time, it can like keep them up at night and different things. So in general, best practice is to have that be activated with the push button. So you would still, regardless, get the opportunity to cross. It's just whether you would get that audible sort of notice to cross by pushing the button or not, or if it's automatic.
Thanks. I don't want to take up more time, but appreciate it.
And sorry, your development question. Yes, we do a comprehensive transportation review of all new developments that come in, especially the really, really big ones, and ask for, they're sort of like a baseline upgrades that we ask for. And so like any ADA ramp upgrades, making sure that we're all in compliance with sidewalk widths, different things like that. And so that, I believe, is part of our sort of baseline assumptions, that they are upgrading signals, adding to any signalized locations or new signalized locations, these things as standard.
Is the audible walk signal part of that basic package that developers need to abide by?
I believe it is. I'll have to confirm with our development review lead on that, but yes,
Okay.
that's sort of a general best practice across the industry to include that.
Cool, thanks.
Perfect. Excellent. Any more discussion on APS? Any other questions, thoughts?
This is Zach. I would just say for this and the other metrics, you know, it all depends on whether DDOT has the data or has done comprehensive studies or as to whether or not we can provide them to the MAC. And regardless of if it's not public, we'll still have to do a memorandum of understanding. So I just wanted to make that point.
Got it. I think in the worst case, like this is just like someone can just like manually go to all of the intersections and just say, okay, there's an APS here, or there's not an APS here. So it's like in the worst case. So it would be great. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think DDOT, we don't have the staff time to do that, but if someone from the MAC.
Yeah. I mean, we could ask for volunteers. Basically, it's like, okay, we could go to have folks say, okay, this DDOT doesn't have this, so we should go and collect this for each one of the intersections. Cool. So then next we've got percent of intersections and unsignalized crosswalks that do not break DC safety laws regulating sightlines. So we've had some conversations with folks. We had when we had Aaron Goldbeck here, who was talking about scooters and other ride share or kind of shared mobility devices that daylighting, that kind of scooter corrals could be used for daylighting. And kind of we had a longer conversation about daylighting. Basically this idea, so DC has some laws that basically say you can't park in certain places that would obstruct the driver's ability to see pedestrians. And this could end up being like pretty bad. So like here, there's some examples of this. So a person with visual impairment is crossing the street at a crosswalk. A driver is parked too close to the crosswalk. And if because that car is blocking the driver's view of the pedestrian, the driver doesn't see that pedestrian and then turns the corner, and then the pedestrian gets killed. Another example, a person with a mobility device is crossing the street at an intersection. A driver is parked at the intersection itself or too close to it. So oncoming, so drivers are going but their view of the of the crosswalk at the intersection is being obstructed, so the driver doesn't see the pedestrian as they approach, and then turns the corner, kills the pedestrian. Or if someone has a hearing impairment, they may not hear the traffic, but kind of same way, so they're not able to jump out in time, and then a driver kills them because the driver wasn't able to see. So basically, there's kind of a series of laws that that DC has that basically regulate no person shall park, stand, or abandon a vehicle within 20 feet of an intersecting roadway or within 20 feet of a crosswalk, other than a crosswalk that's being clearly marked as a pedestrian crossing. And then there's kind of some other language around, other things around driveways. No person shall stop in a bike lane, or 25 feet of a stop or yield sign, 50 feet of a railroad crossing, a lot of other stuff. But I think the intersections and crosswalks are probably the biggest two pieces here. So basically the idea is, there are kind of a bunch of intersections, anecdotally, like, there are a bunch of intersections that are around the district that don't follow this law right now. So basically the parking signs are being placed in such a way, or have been placed in such a way, that give drivers the idea that they can park in a way that is technically illegal, according to our law, but it's not enforced by DPW, and therefore causes some kind of pretty unsafe interactions between drivers and pedestrians. So basically, there are kind of two issues here. One issue is that parking, there's kind of seemingly legal parking that exists, but that's actually illegal because of the placement of the parking sign itself. And then even when the sign is placed legally, there's actually a second issue happens when there's a driver that doesn't park legally. So the first is kind of an issue of our placement of signs, like, the government has placed the sign in an illegal location. The second issue is that the driver ignores the law and parks in an illegal location where it's actually signed as illegal as well. So this is where this kind of conversation that we had with Aaron Goldbeck kind of comes into play, where we could actually we could kind of kill two mosquitoes with one slap, as it said, by putting a scooter corral or other kind of bike, some sort of bike parking that basically forces drivers not to park in that particular place, and it gets scooters and other micromobility devices from being littered on the street or littered on the sidewalk, which we know is a kind of a big accessibility hazard. So this, could be a pretty cool thing where we could have both lots of scooter parking. Maybe we could even get this to be, and we mentioned this to Aaron, in the next iteration of the scooter fleet device permitting, we could actually have scooters be confined to these areas to be parked. You have to park in these areas, and that way we'll never have scooters littering the sidewalk and blocking people with wheelchairs from getting down the sidewalk, if there are enough of these. So basically, like, we could both have scooter corrals that gets scooters off the sidewalk, and we could also enforce our daylighting laws so that you couldn't have, or safety, or kind of our sightline laws. So you couldn't have drivers, even if they wanted to break the law, they couldn't break the law. This is what's called hardened daylight infrastructure. So basically, what this set of metrics is around is so we've got our list A, B, and C intersections from the above from above, where we basically said, okay, list A is where we have at least one principal, one huge road. List B is still a busy road, but not huge roads. And then list C is our smaller streets. And basically here we're looking for, okay, list alpha, beta, and gamma are these lists of intersections, are the subset of these intersections that don't break the law. So basically, there is signage that is placed appropriately to say there is there is no parking within the threshold of what the law says for crosswalks and intersections. And then we'll define another list here, list D, of mid-block crosswalks, and so all across the district. And then list delta is the subset of list D that doesn't break the law. And then we can have subsets of list alpha, beta, gamma, and delta with a scooter corral or other hardened daylighting infrastructure. So basically, so this first set of metrics is about, hey, is the government complying with the law? And then the second set of metrics is around, hey, okay, the government is complying with the law, but are we taking this extra step to make sure that that drivers can't break the law and otherwise set an intersection up for a death or serious injury? So that is the daylighting. This is the second metric. So I'll open up this for conversation.
Yeah, so Karthik, Buddy Moore here again.
Mm-hmm.
So are you talking about the space between, say, a stop sign, and I don't know how many feet it is between the stop sign and where the first car can actually be parked?
That's right. Exactly.
Is that the space that where the scooter corral would be placed?
Yeah, so
Okay.
exactly right. So
Okay.
at the stop sign or at an intersection or before a crosswalk. It's exactly the way to think about it.
Okay.
Hey, this is Zach again. Just on this metric, I will say it's unfortunate we don't have anyone from parking on the call, but in talking with them, I would agree that a lot of this is anecdotal. But just to say that we don't have a comprehensive study or haven't gone out collecting data on where all of our parking signs are placed. I also note that they would possibly have a different interpretation of the law of where that measurement point is, especially when we're talking about the intersection of curbs and those intersecting lines. It's not as simple as just going out with a ruler and sort of measuring from the stop sign or from the end of a crosswalk. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, so maybe we can get their interpretation. Like maybe they can just like write a paragraph or whatever, a couple sentences on like, hey, this is their interpretation.
Yeah,
that would be great. That would be great. And I know there are folks. It looks like Ashton has a question.
I don't. This is a little bit of it's related, but it's a little bit of a tangent. I am really concerned that the vehicular blind spots are increasing because the size of vehicles is increasing, and also the kind of proportion of oversized vehicles is increasing. So by that I mean we have giant pickup trucks, and we have increasingly large SUVs, and we have delivery vehicles and that sort of thing. Because of this, I've seen calls for these regulations to actually be updated to take into account the fact that the 20 feet or whatever the standard is is actually no longer sufficient to give adequate visibility of pedestrians. So if you're stopped at a crosswalk as a driver with a vehicle, you might not even be able to see someone who's walking in the crosswalk in front of you if you're, in a Ford F-150 Lightning or whatever it's called. To what extent is DDOT kind of being progressive about updating its standards so that it can better reflect the risk that these oversized vehicles pose to pedestrians, and particularly those with mobility challenges and other disabilities?
I'll let Christine sort of answer this one, but I'll just say I think we definitely follow the USDOT standard, and I think they're coming out with some new regulations pretty soon that may address some of these larger vehicles and their impacts on pedestrians as well.
Yeah, thanks. So agreed, larger vehicles are resulting in more severe outcomes for everyone that's hit. And yeah, the data certainly backs that up as well. There's a couple challenges with the vehicle design and how DDOT can respond to it. So the big problem is the height of the hood for visibility on the front, as well as the visibility from the A-pillar, the pillars that come down from the hood to the body of the vehicle and allows for the windshield and side windows. So those site constraints exist no matter what vehicle you're in, but are exacerbated by the size. DC Council has passed disincentives and increased fees for larger vehicles, especially by weight. So we're seeing that provided a disincentive for those vehicles. Like Zach said, there's without federal standards to guide this, because this is a federal problem and it's happening across the board. We need guidance and research from them to try and implement some of these best practices, and we're hoping that comes out as well with new guidance. But it is an ongoing challenge, and we try and do things like LPIs that helps establish people in the crosswalk. That's why we do different safety treatments to sort of counteract the larger vehicles.
Hi, Dom. Welcome to the MAC. Did you want to, so welcome to Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council. Would you like to introduce yourself? Okay. We will just, if you are able to hear us, yeah, would love for you to say hello and yeah, welcome to the conversation. So back to this kind of percent of intersections and unsignalized crosswalks that don't break DC safety laws regulating sight lines. It seems like DDOT doesn't have this information, so this would be volunteer collected. But yeah, any discussion on this metric? So basically, yeah, and just kind of to recap again, the first part is, the first set of metrics is kind of prioritized list, alpha, beta, gamma, where we're looking at the subset of the biggest intersections, and then kind of working our way down, and then the first set, kind of these first 5 or first 4 actually, are about government not breaking the law, and then the second is about government helping other people not to break the law. So, so I think that's kind of a nice prioritization as well.
Kartik, could I just start? I want to make it clear that the intentionality behind this is not to break the law. Obviously, we want to be in compliance with the law, and if anything, if any signs exist that do not currently meet what the law states, they are perhaps grandfathered and have not yet been changed because there hasn't been. We changed them, of course, with corridor projects and intersection projects and TSI requests. There's a lot of programs that look to do this comprehensively when we look at a certain intersection or street. But there may be cases where we just haven't gotten to that location yet. So I want to make it clear that the intention is not to break the law and put people's lives in danger. There's just a massive amount of work to do, and not a lot of time to do it. With the urgency that we need, certainly. But I just want to make it clear that no one's intention is to not have this. We just want to be clear that
Totally.
Getting through different programs, updating all of these things.
Our hope is that we can basically collect a baseline of okay, this is where we are. And our hope is that we can get to, what all of these are meant to do is it's we want to get to 100% on all of this stuff. So we want 100% eventually on all of these, but basically this is kind of a nice prioritization of okay, list A intersections. They're if we're gonna have volunteers go out and go and look at go find all the list A intersections and just make sure if there's a list A intersection that that we find doesn't comply, then ideally this can be rectified pretty quickly because it's a pretty big deal, et cetera. What's the best way for this? What's the best way for something like this to get fixed once it's found?
I mean, that's.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to say 311. When I talk to parking, I think there's a roadway sign request in 311, and I think that would be the easiest and quickest way if you flag it as if this sign is in an improper place.
This sign is in an improper place.
Right, and that's just my language. If it is in 311 for roadway signs, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then do you know what the service level is for that?
I don't know what the turnaround time is for that. And again, I will say the measurement from someone who's not a transportation engineer may be different. But if you see a sign that may be in the wrong place, I would just flag that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it would be good. So what we can do is, before our volunteers go out, we can just say, this is how you should be measuring exactly. That would be cool to give them that guidance.
Yeah.
Cool.
I want to provide a little bit of context too, because not everyone in the district is aware of this law. And so when we have gone in the past to remove the parking that is no longer legal, we spend a lot of time back and forth with residents or ANCs or whoever to try and rectify these things. So it may seem easy on the front end to identify all these places, but there is a significant back and forth that happens in a lot of locations.
Yeah.
So we don't, I think I asked this to of I think the public affairs specialist. This is not subject, so complying with this is not subject to NOI. You don't have to issue an NOI to move this, right?
Correct. However, that does not stop people from contacting our director and deputy director and staff and FOIAs and all of the wonderful things to try and get their parking back. So I just want to provide that context as well.
Yeah. But we have the law on our side, which is good. So hopefully, but I understand the point that you're trying to make. Cool. Okay. So then, any more discussion on this? sightline regulations. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we'll update this with the kind of the measurement methodology, and then we'll also update this with like, okay, if you find this somewhere, there's a process to do this 311 roadway signs, and then we'll find out the exact terminology and we'll put it in there too. Cool. Okay, metric 3. Percent of centerline miles of DC's high injury network with a prevailing speed of vehicle speed of less than 20 miles an hour. So centerline miles. So first, I'll explain the difference between centerline miles and lane miles. Centerline miles just means the number of miles that are particular. It's basically the length of a road or a road segment. So if you Pennsylvania Avenue from from the Capitol to the White House probably has 1 centerline mile, as opposed to lane miles, where there are, I think Pennsylvania Avenue has 8 lanes total, maybe more, but there would be 8 lane miles because between the Capitol and the White House. So basically, this is just saying, okay, DC's high injury network, what this is saying is, or now actually, let me before I explain this whole thing. Now I'll explain the DC's high injury network. So DC's Vision Zero team created a heat map, and they put all of our roads and basically looked at all of the crashes from a certain time period, and basically said, hey, these are the worst roads in terms of crashes. So there's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So it's kind of in prioritized order. And basically, these are the most dangerous roads for crashes. And yeah, so that's a high injury network. Or actually, if there was a hand up, go ahead and speak.
Yeah, hi, this is Christine. So I actually led the high injury network process of identifying
go for it.
Yeah. So what we did was we used a GIS tool to walk every single street in DC to look at 5 years of data, of our crash data, that's reported crashes from MPD, injuries and deaths. And we looked at the segments that were most dense with injuries. And then also if there was a street segment that had a lot of deaths, traffic caused deaths with, and maybe not as many. So we both looked at the injury density of those crashes and also scored it by severity as well. And so we came up with tier 1. That is the citywide priorities for the district. Tier 2 is supplementing that to make sure that we have at least 20% of each ward represented. And so we had to add some in for like Ward 3, where we see fewer crashes and fewer less severe crashes. And then our tier 3 or 2015 are those streets that were identified in our original 2015 action plan as having high numbers, just basic counts of pedestrian and cyclist fatalities. But we did look at all modes because Vision Zero is about all modes. No matter how you travel, people not being killed or injured on our streets.
Awesome. That is much, much more comprehensive than I could have ever been. And so thank you for interjecting, Christine. So basically it's kind of a prioritization metric or prioritization, of, hey, these are the streets that we're really worried about. Actually, you've got a question.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, let me ask this question of Christine. You stated, I think I heard you say, or interpreted that Ward 3 has the fewest crashes. Did I hear that?
Yes. So in general, we see the fewest crashes in wards 3, 4, and 1. And, different years have different data. But generally, we see the most crashes in our equity focus areas, which are in wards 5, 7, and 8.
Do we know why?
Oh, yeah. The streets, there's a multitude of factors that are involved in that. But street design is a really big one.
Okay.
Driver behaviors and different and risk tolerance. So it's a lot of like sort of societal things plus design things that
Okay.
influence. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
So the question that I had, I came across some interesting tidbits about how cities like San Francisco and Denver took a little bit more comprehensive of an approach to developing their high injury network. So they worked with, for instance, the Department of Public Health or area hospitals to ensure that they were capturing crashes and injuries that weren't reported through more standardized processes like the local police department, which I think is important because I know in DC, not all crashes between pedestrians or cyclers are treated with the same kind of seriousness that we would hope to see by MPD officers. And so I'm curious if there's a future iteration planned that is more encompassing of the alternative kind of routes of data that might better represent the true nature of severity and frequency of crashes.
Sure. Yeah. So that crash data is an ongoing challenge to get the 100% representation of all actual crashes that happen. And there's a lot of different reasons why people do or don't report crashes, and why we have found that, MPD may or may not respond in certain situations. We always encourage people to, if MPD does not respond and there is an injury and a crash did occur, please do report that to your local district. They will take a report for it. But without that, our current methods, there is a noted undercount. It's not. I don't want to say it's significant, but it does. We do have some areas of improvement to have there. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to get the systems to talk between hospital data and EMS data and NPD crash reports. So that is an ongoing challenge that we're trying to address. We do have a traffic records, I forget what the actual acronym is, crash committee. Basically, they are the ones responsible to making sure that our crash data and traffic records are accurate, or as accurate as they can be, and try and work on these issues to get a fuller picture of the crashes that are occurring.
Got it. And how often is the high injury network updated?
Generally, best practice is every 3 to 5 years to see. One, we want to see if the projects that we're doing on these are effective and how effective they have been, and give us time to sort of respond to these areas where we see the highest amount of crashes and highest severities.
So when will DDOT be making its next iteration?
Since we just published it in 22, I think we're probably on a 5-year cycle, but we do monitor conditions on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis. Anytime a crash occurs, we have a lot of follow-up, especially a severe and fatal crash.
So yes, excellent. So basically, Yeah, so we've got centerline miles defined, high injury defined, and prevailing speed is a little bit wishy-washy, but basically aims to capture two concepts. One, design speed, and then the kind of the speed that folks are going at any given time. And we kind of, you can pick this basically at any time. So we kind of just put a stake in the ground at a few different times: 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 9 p.m. And this is the 85th percentile speed. And what does this mean? So this means basically that if you take 100 drivers or 100 cars that are going down a particular road at this time, what is the 85th fastest person going? And this is kind of a way that DC and municipalities around the country have decided to aim to set speed limits. But basically, there's a lot of literature that says speed is a huge factor in death and injury, and basically that. And specifically with vulnerable road users, so pedestrians and people who are basically not in a car, and especially people with disabilities, who I'll call ultra vulnerable road users, because oftentimes they're just more vulnerable, whether they're lower to the ground or not able to hear a reckless driver coming, so they won't be able to jump out of the way or see one. With as high acuity, that it's particularly important that drivers have a lot of time to stop. So speed matters in a bunch of different ways. So one, it matters because of the driver's reaction time. So the slower you're going, the more time you have to, or driver has to react to another driver or a pedestrian or anything. And then second, the severity of the crash really, and the kind of the chance of survival. So I think the stat is at 20 miles per hour, you've got a 5% chance of death if you were struck at 20 miles an hour. But by the time you're struck with someone who is going 30 miles an hour, that goes up ninefold. So you're 9 times as likely to die when you're struck at 30 miles an hour rather than 20 miles an hour. So basically the idea here is, okay, let's take the streets that are most dangerous, that we've identified as the most dangerous streets, and make sure that folks are driving at a safe speed so that pedestrians don't get killed. Christine, you've got a question, or you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify 85th percentile because I describe it a little bit differently. So 85th percentile is so you collect the data for a street, and the 85th percentile is the speed at which 85% of drivers are going at or below. So it's a little bit different than how you explained it. But yeah, that sort of sets in a traditional sense, the prevailing speed. Our safety team has been looking at different measures and reassessing speed limits, especially posted speed limits for that.
Cool. Thanks for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we're trying to do, and then there's also something called design speed. And the design speed is like the input for a lot of the design processes that go into creating and maintaining a road. So we've got the DEM at DDOT, which is the Design and Engineering Manual, which in turn references, I think, the AASHTO manual. And that starts with the design speed. So basically it's, okay, if you want cars to be going, this number of cars is basically traffic volume and traffic speed. If you want this number of cars to be going this fast, this is the number of lanes that you need, and this is the width of the lanes that you need, and then kind of some various other treatments around maybe the road surface or kind of other things that go into deciding what the design speed of a particular road is. So the design speed here is something that we should be able to find out for all of these places. We know that 20 miles an hour is there's that saying 20 is plenty. And basically we want to make sure that when pedestrians are getting hit, they're not being killed. So this is kind of where this 20 miles an hour is coming from. So basically, ideally, we're not just changing the speed limits and hoping that the drivers will change their behavior, but we're also ensuring that our most dangerous streets are being changed so that we actually have design speeds that are actually at 20 miles an hour or less. And then we could also look at 85th percentile speeds at these different times. These different times it's kind of picked out of the air, but basically kind of getting a sense of, hey, this is what people are actually going on these streets, and we want to make sure that, hey, when people are getting hit on these streets, they're not getting hit at 30 miles an hour. They're getting hit at 20 miles an hour or even less potentially. So that's this particular metric.
Hey, sorry, this is Zach again. I would just say, again, we don't have data on the design speeds for our high injury networks. That would definitely require a traffic study to do that. I would also say that most of the roads in our high injury network are not designed to be less than 20 miles per hour. If you take a road like New York Avenue, it is a major thoroughfare. It's a regional connector. To make the design speed or the speed at which a car can go less than 20 miles per hour would take a lot of engineering, and we don't have any approvals to do that. So just want to make that comment.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think this document is basically one that just measures, it's just, it's a report card on the accessibility and equity of our street. So the goal is here to reflect, hey, how accessible or equitable are our streets? If folks with disabilities are significantly less likely to be in cars and have the protection of cars, our hope is that our streets are designed in such a way that when they are hit by cars, because they need to cross New York Avenue as well, they're not going to die. So I think here this is about saying, hey, we can make decisions as a city, but are we making decisions for the convenience of drivers who may not even live here, and putting that higher priority above people who actually live here, who are vulnerable and don't want to die. Christine, you've got a hand up.
Yeah. So design speed and the number of lanes is a little bit different. So the number of lanes is usually dictated by the amount of traffic that the street is supposed to carry and is designed to carry because of its functional class. The design speed of a rural road can be 70 miles per hour with a single lane in each direction. And that really is part of the way that we would measure that from an engineering perspective is what are the turn radiuses like? How long are your tapers? How long, what's the sight distance, for the next intersection? What kind of clear zone you have? There's a lot that goes into determining design speed. And I counted a little bit different the number of lanes. For the timing, I think one suggestion is to be a bit more thoughtful, because I think that'll end up measuring where congestion is. because in downtown, we just naturally see a lot of congestion. That's where people are going and coming from. And so there are times where absolutely traffic is moving below 20 miles per hour, but that's because of the amount of drivers trying to access the street.
Good point. Is there kind of another way that you'd suggest measuring the kind of prevailing speed, or is there a way that you think about prevailing speed?
I mean, really, it would be data collection. We'd have to collect the data and look at what the posted speed is, 85th percentile, 95th percentile, how many are speeding in excess of the posted speed limit. So what's the, 5 miles per hour, how many are going 5 miles per hour or more over? Sometimes referencing what ATE standards are. But yeah, I have to give that a little bit more thought.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, we basically just kind of picked this, like this prevailing speed. So basically, we want to, get some measure of like, hey, okay, this is we know we want to make sure that folks, when they're getting hit at 20 miles an hour or less. So like, how do we, and it only takes one to, I guess like you could have one bozo go 80 and even something that's like designed to be 20. But kind of what is, how we can kind of figure out, basically kind of some way of capturing like, okay, this street, like most people go this speed. Across time, I'm not sure how to think about timing, but yeah, any suggestions that you have would be great.
Yeah, I think we'd have to do a lot of data collection for this, and in all of these different segments. So this would take quite a bit of work to figure out. We have looked into big data sources like Streetlight or others, but those are not really precise because a lot of them rely on people having smartphones and Bluetooth connected and different things like that. So I'd have to think through how we could provide something like that.
Cool. There are a couple folks that have reached out and said that they could help find out what the design speeds were, kind of back out based on like the way that some streets were designed. So we can use that. We can use those volunteers to find out the design speed. But yeah, like any thought on like the prevailing speed would be cool.
I'm hesitant to say, yes, I would rely on a volunteer effort for design speeds. That's something we would really need engineers who are trained in this to know and be able to measure all of that, because there's literally calculations that go into this. So I just want to tread really carefully on like what would produce usable data for it.
Yeah, no, I just trying to make do with what we can get. Like if DDOT has this, then that's great. But if not, then like we'll roll with what we can get.
Right, and DDOT does not have this.
Cool. Okay. Cool. So next, any more discussion on centerline miles and high injury network, or the high injury network 20 miles an hour prevailing speed? Okay, cool. All right. Next, we've got percent of signalized intersections that prohibit left turn conflicts with pedestrians. So here, this is where, there's been a bunch of research that shows that people are significantly more likely to get hit in an intersection than mid-block. And specifically, the left turn is what causes a lot of injuries and death. And so the left turn is the super dangerous movement that a car can make, and that is it is, I think, among the most dangerous maneuvers that a driver can make. So there are ways that we can signalize our intersections so that that we reduce the number of conflict points. And conflict points are basically when, two people or two different modes are going, and they both think that they are kind of legally allowed to go. So if you can imagine, like, if you've got a green ball, like a green circle, and someone can turn left. That's what's called a permissive left turn, where you can take a left turn on a green circle. That's what's called a permissive left turn. You can imagine that is can be simultaneous to a walk signal. So you've got a pedestrian that's walking and crossing the street. That is basically setting up a intersection, or it's an intersection design that is basically just waiting for someone to get seriously injured or killed, because the left turning driver oftentimes is not looking for pedestrians. They're looking for an oncoming car, which is why it makes it such a dangerous intersection maneuver, is they're looking for an oncoming car, not a pedestrian. So I've actually been, very nearly hit on multiple occasions when someone is, they think, okay, green circle, there's no one who's coming in the oncoming direction, so I can turn, but I've got a white walk signal, so I'm good, but the car doesn't see me, and then I'm kind of very narrowly missed. So this is what's called a permissive left turn. Ideally, the way that you can what's called deconflict this intersection type is where you say you cannot turn on the green circle. In fact, the only time that you can turn is when you turn on what's called a green arrow. And there'll be a red arrow that makes it such that you cannot make a left turn unless you've got the green arrow only. So there will never be a time where the pedestrian has both a white walk signal and a car can think that they're legally allowed to turn. So this is this metric here of percentage of signalized intersections that prohibit left turn conflicts with pedestrians. And basically here it's just, okay, subset, we've got our list A, B, and C intersections. So again, list A intersections are ones with a principal arterial. List B is one that's not in list A, but has still a big road or minor arterial. And list C are intersections that are neither minor arterial, that are not an arterial, and not in list A or B. And basically, we want to make sure, hey, list A, again, prioritization, we definitely don't want any list A intersections to be having permissive left turns. We only want what are called protected left turns, where there's, they have kind of exclusive, there is no walk signal that is simultaneous to a left turning movement by a driver. So here, again, I think DDOT doesn't have, or may not have this data, but this is something that we can, like a volunteer could just go and look and say, okay, this signal has a permissive left turn or it doesn't. Any thoughts on this metric?
Oh, hey, this is Zach. We don't have data on the permissive left turns.
Cool. Yeah, I think this one is kind of particularly easy for folks we can just say, hey, go and find out if this particular intersection has a permissive left turn or not. And then we can, I think this one is probably pretty easy to measure. Christine, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I would, okay, so just like there's different like timings for different times of day, left turns are allowed or not allowed at certain times of day as well, in a variety of different locations. So that's a little bit complicated even to like have a person go out and say like, yes, there is, it sort of depends on like when they're coming out. Are they doing it at different times of the day?
Yeah, maybe we can just say is never allowed. We can just say like a permissive left turn is never allowed. And that way that we could eliminate, because yeah, you raise a good point about some intersections will not allow during certain times, but maybe we can just say, hey, like this is the number of intersections, or this intersection never allows a permissive left turn.
Yeah, and then also to implement something like that, protected everywhere. I'm totally in support of that as a principle. However, it does require corridor projects that can repurpose street space for that, and sometimes there are higher and better uses for that street space in some cases. Like if we have dedicated bus lanes, maybe we don't have the amount of street space we would need for a dedicated bus lane plus the protected left space. So generally you want to have both of those together, not only the signal time, but the space in the street, so that drivers are waiting outside of moving traffic.
I didn't totally follow that.
So yeah, so to implement or to build a lot of these, all of our intersections as protected lefts, we would need dedicated lanes, street pocket, like turning pockets for those vehicles that are turning left to wait. And so that we only have limited right of way, right? So it's like, if we're doing a bus project, for instance, and we want to do a dedicated bus lane that's 24 hours, do we use our street space for that? Or do we use it for this dedicated left turn pocket? Because we only have so much and we're not widening streets, right? So it's a trade-off discussion. And then the other part of that is, do we ban that left turn? And if so, what are the other implications that come from, like, are we going to see more diversion into the neighborhoods? Do we see more right turns at some locations? So all of that is just, part of the context as well.
So we have to have a pocket for left turns?
If it's protected, yes.
Is it okay? Where does that come from?
MAACDC, federal standards.
So I wonder, because I know, because we don't, that like the kind of the implication. So is there a safety reason for that?
Yeah, because if you have, so a lot of our existing safety standards are based on vehicle crashes, right? So if you have a vehicle, I'll give an example for Southern Avenue. We're putting in a signal with a dedicated left turn pocket at Ridge and Southern Avenue because we see a lot of injury rear ends, side swipes, because when people come upon somebody stopped waiting to make that left turn to get that gap in traffic or let a pedestrian pass or what have you, there's a big difference in the speed of that person who's going forward and the one who stopped. And so that it's called a speed differential. So when that speed differential is really high, like somebody coming upon somebody waiting to make a left turn, that creates a bigger or a more severe outcome than if it had that dedicated turn pocket. So it's both an operational thing, so it allows the through moving traffic to go through, but it is also a safety thing so that we get fewer injury crashes and vehicle to vehicle as well.
Got it. But if we're at 20 miles an hour or less, then it would be less of an issue, right? If the roads were designed for, or had design speed of 20 miles an hour or less, then if people are going 20 miles an hour or less, then the rear end crashes would be less of an issue.
They would be less severe, but that is highly dependent on the type of vehicle too, and whether there's a rear passenger and different things like that.
Yeah. I think so. MAACDC allows for engineering judgment, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So like we're not bound totally by MAACDC, right? Okay,
so for some things, yes. For some things, no. So there's I'll do a page turn with you if you want, but there's a shall, should, and a may. and the
Mhm.
shall is a requirement. Everybody who does this must follow this certain requirement. There's a
Yeah.
should, which is best practice and guidance and things that that we should follow. But is if you don't follow it, you know, you can use engineering judgment for that. And then there's a may, which is again a best practice, a suggestion, but with fewer, I guess, less sort of restriction behind it. So those things that are shall in the MUTCD are requirements. So we do have to follow those.
Is the left turn pocket a shall?
I'd have to double check. I don't know the entire manual off the top of my head. I wish I did, but
Cool.
yeah, I'll double check.
Yeah, because I think I think there's the left turn pocket. So basically, the left turn pocket is kind of the side. It's basically a place for people to wait, which is which allows people to go to keep moving. But we could but that's like this is a safety trade-off. So we're basically trading off operations, so convenience to safety.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because if there are cases where you have got, as a driver, if you feel like stressed about making a left turn, you're going to make more risky decisions in your driving. Maybe you will go in that gap that's not quite big enough for you. If you have that situation where you don't have a dedicated space for driving. So that when we have that happen, that does present more severe outcomes for pedestrians and cyclists trying to, so drivers are not as patient when they feel more of the stress from other drivers and the risk of being hit by others. So it does have both safety and operational benefits. I see it more from a safety perspective, because I have seen these crashes that happen when people have to make a left turn when they don't have a dedicated space.
Yeah, so maybe we can kind of continue to refine this metric. We can talk to more folks. But Buddy, did you want to say something?
No, first, I'm okay.
Yeah, we can take another turn at this metric. This is good. This is good feedback. Then the last metric that we've got, percent of emergency evacuation route centerline miles. So centerline miles. Again, kind of different from lane miles, but emergency evacuation routes are basically the routes that have been designated by DDOT and the Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency, HCMA, as these are the kind of primary methods for primary ways that people can get out of the city. So we know by far the highest capacity or the kind of best use in terms of operational efficiency of any road is a bus lane. It moves by far more people than cars. And also turns out that the bus is far more accessible because, again, people with disabilities twice as likely to live in zero-car households, also overrepresented in lowest income areas, and already nearly 40% of DC doesn't own a car, and it's even kind of higher again in for folks with disabilities, higher in low income, and then there's this intersection of identities as well: low income and disabled and car free or carless. And basically, there's this nightmare scenario where in emergencies, if buses can't run in these emergency evacuation routes, they're basically bumper to bumper cars, where again you might have people who are taking up a huge amount of space in a big truck or even a small car, versus if you fit the same number of people in a bus, it takes up a lot less area. So basically this nightmare scenario where we've got an emergency, and a bunch of people who can afford cars are driving their cars out bumper to bumper, but because there's no space that's being allocated to buses, the highest capacity vehicle and the most accessible form of transit, people with disabilities are basically left to die. And this is kind of where we're trying to figure out, okay, we've identified these emergency evacuation routes. We know that buses are the most accessible form of transit and their highest capacity. So, and, you know, there's no time at which there's a specific, you know, we want kind of the most accessible vehicles to be able to move people and most efficiently, as you know, as far as possible, especially in emergency situations. We can measure this last piece, the percent of emergency evacuation route centerline miles without a 24/7 bus lane. I think DDOT doesn't have this data, but I think we can measure this pretty easily, because we can basically look at the emergency evacuation routes that are dedicated, that were allocated or kind of designated as emergency evacuation routes by HCMA and DDOT, and look to see, okay, is there a 24/7 bus lane or not? And then we can get, we can put a percentage on that.
Oh, hey, this is Zach again. How should I say this? We don't have we don't have any 24/7 bus only lanes. There is a tiny sliver on 14th Street in Upper Northwest that just happens to be 24/7 because there's no parking allowed at all. But that doesn't cover the emergency evacuation route on 14th Street. Yeah. I would also say that in an emergency, I don't know if the bus priority restrictions would still hold. I can check the regulations on that to see, but I don't know if this exactly correlates with how we would move people out in an emergency through the 24/7 bus only lanes.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, again, because this is like a report card. So it's like, hey, you know, we want DC's streets to be accessible and equitable. You know, the bus being by far the most equitable and accessible form of transit. We want to make sure that folks, especially in emergencies, can get out. So I haven't seen a plan for evacuating people with disabilities by anyone. So I think this, like, in the absence of a plan, this is kind of I think the best we can do. So I think this is, yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay, so I think, yeah, so we can do a little bit more thinking about metric 4, but I think kind of you know, there's kind of some other metrics that we'd love to look at. You know, the percentage of approved traffic control plans that allow closure of sidewalks. Had a conversation with folks about that. It seems like we would need like significant DDOT resources, because they don't actually track this information. We had this meeting after the neighbor in off of Rhode Island Avenue was killed after DDOT permitted the closure of a sidewalk. That seemed like this is going to be a tough metric to actually track down. Yeah, percent of lane miles dedicated to parking private vehicles, which is the least accessible way or least equitable way of using street space. You know, percent of scooters that are blocking the public right of way that are addressed within 24 hours. This is what the metric that we use, that we passed a joint resolution with BAC and MAAC, the Bicycle Advisory Commission or Council, and Pedestrian Advisory Council. Percent of cars with at least $1,000 in moving violations that have not yet been seized. This would require data from both the MV and DPW. Then, you know, disparity between highway spending and sidewalk spending, we would need significant data from DDOT to do this one. we've got a few that are on hold. So safe accommodations violations that are addressed within 24 hours. We're hoping to talk to folks about getting this data. We don't know if that data is available. And then we're going to talk, so percent of traffic engineers who have traveled DC arterial or traversed DC arterial intersection with a manual wheelchair, blindfolds, earplugs, and with a person with disability. With a person with a disability, this is on hold just to see if there's a kind of a better, this is going to be tough to actually measure, because this would require the traffic engineers to actually report something. So that's on hold pending a conversation with the chief engineer. So we're seeing if there's a way to kind of address this kind of empathy gap. And that, I think, is about it. So yeah, so we can come back, we can do a little bit more thinking on metric 4. And then, yeah, and Christine, if you've got kind of more thoughts on any of these, but yeah, especially the prevailing speed, that would be great. Anyone who has kind of any more feedback would be great. But yeah, I mean, I think we're getting close to final. We've got, so we'll revisit, we'll tweak metric 3 a little bit, with kind of the precise definition of speed. And then we can revisit metric 4 to see, hey, is there a better way to prevent these types of conflicts with pedestrians and left turning vehicles? But I think, yeah, I think we're getting close.
Okay, and Karthik, I would like to thank Christine and Zach for their input. I've learned a lot about transportation. As you know, my vision is very, very poor, and I don't really get into too many sections of DC because I'm skeptical of not being able to do what I feel comfortable doing if I'm in an unusual section. But I'd just like to thank them for coming on board to telling us what it is that DDOT can and can't do. So just thanks again for coming and providing information to us.
Yeah, thank you both, Christine and Zach. And yeah, Kevin and Neha, thanks so much for being here, as well as Nana, 4-8 Nana. Yeah, any other kind of discussion, thoughts? Hopefully we'll have some folks from DDOT, maybe from HCMA, at our next meeting in November. But any other thoughts before we close? Any kind of open public comment, anything? Cool. Well, thanks so much, everyone. And we will reconvene this second Wednesday of November, which I believe is the 8th of November, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Neha? At 5:30.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Perfect.
All right.
Great. So yeah, thanks so much for a great meeting, and we will see you in November. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
All right, thanks.